I'm Melisa Idris, and you're watching The Future is Female, the show where we find the extraordinary in every woman. Joining me on the show today, I have Sharmila Sekaran. She is the co-founder and chairperson of the children's advocacy group for Voice of the Children. Welcome to the show, Sharmila.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to begin a little bit about your background. So you are also a partner with the law firm in KL.
That's right.
But how did you come to be involved in activism and advocacy work, and specifically then found Voice of the Children? Voice of the Children, yes?
Voice of the Children. Well, I've always been involved in some kind of activism, even from young. You know, it's something that I think my mum instilled in us growing up.
Okay.
So it's
the family is involved with advocacy work?
At some point,
Charity,
or some level.
okay.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Good.
My mum was a surgeon, and my dad's was a civil servant at the time when I was growing up. So very much something that we were involved in.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Very, very incrementally as children. And even when I went away to study, it was something that followed me. And Voice of the Children started because a lot of people know Dr. Hartini Zainuddin,
Yes.
who's a passionate advocate for the rights of the children. She had some issues from the work she was doing, and she'd been asking around as to who could perhaps advise on the advocacy side of things.
Okay.
And I met her, and then one thing led to another, and 5 of us started Voice of the Children.
Oh, brilliant.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, you know, the thing about child marriage is it's something that's been happening around the world and in Malaysia for many, many, many years. Every time we hear of a story where, you know, a very young girl, a teenager or even preteen, marries a much older man, a 40-year-old.
A preteen, they go that young?
Well, the one in Kelantan was an 11-year-old.
11-year-old, that's right, yes.
So the youngest that we've come across, for example, in Sarawak, was as young as 10.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, they're very, very young when they are married off to significantly older men. You know, and not just VOC, Voice of the Children, but other organizations also kind of raise their voice and say, this cannot be, you know, we need to do something. The government responds in some way or other, and then it dies and nothing happens. So 3 years ago, we were talking about it. VOC had intervened and participated. We held a watching brief in another kind of media story of the girl in Sabah, 13-year-old in Sabah, who there was a report of her having had sexual relations with a 40-year-old general manager or manager of a restaurant. And he was charged, and then he went and married her, and they were going to drop the charges.
I remember that.
And we kind of advocated and raised the issue with the Attorney General's chambers that it is still statutory rape, and a subsequent marriage cannot negate the statutory rape that had already happened. But you know, these cases come and go, and they continue, and very little is done, very little movement.
You know, that got me thinking about how, you know, this documentary is going to move the conversation forward, because you're absolutely right. I mean, there are debates that typically happen whenever there's news of a younger girl that is being married to an older man, and it's reported by the media, and there is a firestorm after that. I'm grateful for the public interest on this issue, but it tends to die out. How do you keep the conversation going? And not just going, but also what we need is kind of more meaningful, deeper conversations about this issue, right?
Absolutely. So what we did, well, what we're hoping with the video or the documentary is, one, we want to have targeted screenings. So we're not going to put it up on YouTube just yet for everyone to watch. We want to have screenings so that we can have discussions around those screenings, and we can hear the voices, and we want to hear the voices who support child marriage or think that's a good idea.
Okay.
For 2 reasons, because if it is a real issue, then we need to find solutions to those issues. So we need to hear what it is so that we can find the solutions. And we also want to be able to engage with these voices and perhaps change them if we can through advocacy, which is what we do.
Right. So the documentary is targeted to, I guess I'm curious to know who it's targeted to. Who are the people that you say need to be part of this conversation?
Other activists.
Okay.
We would really like to be able to do a viewing, a screening of this with members of parliament as the lawmakers. A lot of them do think that child marriage is a good thing, or is preferable to a girl having relationships outside the marriage, sexual relations outside the marriage. But we're not addressing why they're having those sexual relations outside the marriage and what we can do to stop those relations. And then what we do to protect the child within that circumstance or scenario. We also are hoping to be able to take the video, so we're trying to look for funding to be able to either do voiceovers, or at least to have subtitles.
The video is in English currently?
The video is in English, the documentary is in English and Malay, so some of
it's a bit mixed, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, with subtitles.
Yeah, because of the people we interviewed. So the Malay is subtitled. We're trying to get the English part subtitled into Malay, so that a Malay audience, or predominantly Malay audience, or speaking audience, will appreciate it as well.
So very briefly, I'd like to, I guess, also, I mean, for those who haven't yet watched the documentary, hopefully we will get a chance to watch it. The documentary explores the issue of child marriage from the perspective of children who have gone through
girls,
who have gone through child marriage. So Hafiza and Aisha. So Hafiza is an Orang Asli Jahud who married as a teenager. Aisha is a young Muslim girl rescued from marriage at the age of 11.
So she didn't actually go through the marriage. She was rescued just before. But it was impending for her. It was very much, you know, a shroud over her.
Her reality, right?
Yes.
It was going to be her reality.
Absolutely.
Why was it important for you to tell the story from the perspective of the children, the girls, the young women?
So very often we hear the voices of people like myself and other activists and a lot of adults, whether they're doctors or, you know, experts or even politicians, about child marriage, whether it's good or bad, and the ills of it, and, you know, things like that. Obviously there's the other voice that is saying, like I said earlier, that says, well, if a child is already having relations, then, you know, maybe let's formalize it within the marriage. But we never hear what the children actually think and feel, and definitely not the children who are going through this. So obviously this happened before the Kelantan case, the recent Kelantan case last year. And one of the things that came out from the Kelantan case was, I think it was reported in the media, someone had interviewed her and she said that it was something she wanted to go through, and she was in love with this man who she married. And of course, you know, the hairs on my hand stood up. I was like, how can an 11-year-old girl be in love with a 40-year-old man? What does she know of love in that context? But, you know, we never hear the voice of the child. And under those circumstances, when the husband is sitting there, her parents are sitting there, and parents have just given away in marriage, you've got the entire media circus going on around her. Was that the true voice of that 11-year-old girl? Was she given an opportunity to air her views, her real, true feelings? And one of the things that VOC has done also separately from this is we've done a couple of legal literacy programs.
Legal literacy programs to teach people their legal rights?
That's right, in particular children. And with that, we try to get them to tell us what they think and feel of different scenarios, encountering the police, say, for example. Because we were doing this with, you know, not children who come from good, strong, wholesome backgrounds, but the children who are going to come into contact. Street kids and, you know, children like that who came from dysfunctional families, poorer backgrounds, children who perhaps had absent parents, children like that. And the thing that struck me about those children is when we gave them, we had kind of like, you know, the emoticons. And we gave them the different emoticons, you know, a happy face, a sad face, the one with just a grin rather than a laughing face, angry, things like that, anxious, you know, the ones with the big eyes. We gave them a bunch of kind of emoticons, if you like, and they could only identify with happy and sad. They could not identify with anxiety and, so it was important for us to be able, so when I go back to this 11-year-old girl, if she is as emotionally and in terms of feelings so stunted as these other children are, then, you know, the true voice doesn't really come out. And when no one takes the time and trouble to actually talk to the children, get to know them, get their trust, and then interview them, when you just, you know, swoop in, parachute in, tell me what you think.
And then stick a microphone in an
Absolutely.
11-year-old's face.
Absolutely.
What can she say?
Absolutely.
All right, Sharmila, we're going to continue this conversation right here on The Future is Female. Make sure you stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Future is Female. I'm Melisa Idris. My guest today is Sharmila Sekaran, the chairperson of Voice of the Children. We were talking about child marriage before the break. Sharmila, what would you like people to understand about child marriage in Malaysia? I mean, there are a lot of misconceptions out there, a lot of myths out there. What would you like people to understand?
That child marriage is never right for the child. In Malaysia, we're quite unique in the sense that we have almost an equal number of boys and girls getting married early.
It happens to young boys too.
As well,
okay.
Yeah. Most of the cases, because, you know, the things that the media cover are the cases where it's a very young girl and a very old man, like the Kelantan issue I mentioned just now, or Sabah. But the reality is that more often than not, they're more similar age.
Oh, so they're closer in age.
That's right.
Okay.
And very often it is a case of, you know, two people meeting somewhere and falling in love, and one thing leads to another, and
the family wants them to formalize that relationship.
That's right.
And it's often done early, right?
It's done early because they're already having very, very close, intimate relationships with each other.
So because of that, that adds to the statistics of child marriage as well.
That's right.
But your view of that is that it robs them of their futures as well.
It certainly does. And that's what the two girls say. So one of the girls was interviewed, and the Orang Asli girl was asked, you know, so are you happy? She's 24 now, or when we interviewed her, she was 24, onto her third marriage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And goodness knows how many before she hits 30, perhaps, I don't know. She was asked, so, you know, are your friends happy? Because it's something that was quite common in that village, the Orang Asli village. And she looks at her friends and then she says, no, I think they're like me, unhappy.
Do we know anything? Has research taught us, or has there been research done about the sustainability of child marriages? Do they tend to last, and are they often polygamous?
So one of the big problems for Malaysia is that we don't have proper data.
Okay.
We don't have, we've not collected the data properly, and we don't have disaggregated data.
Okay, yeah, that's something that the UN Special Rapporteur on Poverty mentioned as
well.
Right?
Yeah, you know, and that's one of our failings, because for us to meaningfully address issues or to actually discuss it in an intelligent way, even if you want to support whatever it is, in this case child marriage, you need the data to be able to support it or argue against it. So that's one of the big problems that we have, that we don't have a central body that is collecting this information. So Muslim marriages fall under the Sharia system. The Sharia court approves the marriage, and as we know, Sharia is state, the jurisdiction is state-led.
Yeah.
So states will have this information. There's no central body that you can go to. So it means actually going down to the ground to each and every Sharia court to go through their files to find out, get this information.
Okay.
Non-Muslim marriages are, you know, that's registered with NRD, so that we have from the Home Affairs, Ministry of Home Affairs. But again, we don't have this as a combined data. Orang Asli marriages or Orang Asal marriages, if you get married through the traditional system of the Orang Asli and Orang Asal, that's not recorded at all. It's customary,
okay.
It's recognized by law, we recognize it, but there is no data on that.
Okay. So there are serious blind spots when it comes to the data. What about the common perception, Sharmila, that child marriage is an issue that is confined to a specific race, a specific religion, and a specific community?
So the little information and data that we do have that has come out in Parliament as well is that, you know, it's something that crosses all of races, all religions, all cultures in Malaysia. And I would say that if you actually look at the breakdown of population, it happens almost an equal number. So yes, in absolute terms, you may get more Muslim marriages, and because the Sharia enactments, the different state enactments, do not prohibit or set a minimum age, so we're getting these cases of very, very young children getting married, whereas the federal system under the Marriage Law and Reform Act, the Law Reform Marriage and Divorce Act, yes, mouthful, that sets minimum age for girls of 16.
Okay.
So you can't get married. There's no path to be married at the age of 13 or 14. So while we do know anecdotally, and we've come across these children, that children younger than 16 are getting married, they go through a customary marriage, and then they register later.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess my question is, I mean, the documentary put forth the child's environment, right? How poverty affects child marriage, socioeconomic background, cultural beliefs, they all become enablers. So what did you want to kind of showcase with that in terms of the link between poverty and child marriage?
So, you know, hearteningly for me, because we really didn't know what we were going to get, the voice that was going to come out from these children. But although we only show 2 children, they're 2 of our wonderful women who spoke, girls who spoke. We have interviewed other girls and 2 boys who had gone through a marriage, and all of them said this was not a good thing for them.
Okay.
And Aisha in particular, her sister had also gone through a child marriage.
Okay, so it's clearly, you know, within the family as well, it's a practice
yes.
that they,
yeah.
Okay.
So Aisha's mother is a single mother. Aisha's one of 12 children, I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of 12. And her mother had more than one partner, so they're not 12 children from the same father. Okay. We don't know where Aisha's father is, but we think he's either a drug addict or he's in prison, you know, he's not a wholesome character. But what was clear is that Aisha said, I don't want to go down the path of my older sister. Okay. And she had a dream of becoming a policeman. That's a dream. Wow. So, you know, you can tell that a lot of these children actually could dream of something different or something better if they've been given that opportunity. So Aisha says that that's what her grandfather wanted of her. But with the Orang Asli children, because they don't have good role models coming back, and they don't have someone telling them that you can dream and these are the options for you, they have none, and they, you know, for them it's just lepa, and then the most natural thing happens. You fall in love, and in a lot of the cultures, there's no such thing as dating. There's no long term where you can, you know, meet a boy for a couple of years and then marry him later.
But it's difficult to imagine a life that you don't see represented in front
Yes.
of you, right? So that
Absolutely.
I think that's something that children need, a role model to know that they can do more than what their sisters or their mothers or their aunties did. You know, during this 3-year process, Sharmila, I think in June, the Deputy Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, you know, which is you know, considered to be the highest authority for most Muslims when it comes to Islamic jurisprudence, and he issued a fatwa against child marriage, calling for marriage to be based on mutual consent and at the minimum age of 16. Did that change the narrative for you at all? Did you see did that change the narrative for the conversations here in Malaysia?
Not really, because not significantly. So the Prime Minister came out quite strongly, and he said he wanted all states to impose a minimum age of 18, which we are fully in support of, because even 16 is a bit young. What we're not talking about is why 16-year-olds or girls below 16 are getting married, why they need to get married, why we've not come across any who want to get married, but certainly they are being pushed in that direction by the parents for a particular reason. And what we're not discussing is why that is happening.
We're not discussing
We're not discussing it.
Okay.
So
is it too uncomfortable, or
we know
we
why
just not? Okay.
We know why it's happening, it's because of these relationships they're in.
Okay. Is it often spurred by teen pregnancy?
Yes.
Okay, sex outside of marriage.
That's right.
And that the parents want to formalize that.
That's
okay.
right.
All right.
So we know that's the reason, but why are teenagers indulging in sex out, as teenagers? Why are they not focused on something else before, and then, they focus on getting married when they're in 20s?
Right.
And that's what Aisha says. Aisha, in the documentary, says that she wants to study, she wants to go to university, she wants to work, and then think about getting married at the age of 23. And that is what a lot of children who come from good backgrounds, where they are receiving a proper education, proper guidance, where they're given a vision to hope that you can become a doctor, a lawyer, an astronaut, a ballerina, whatever it is. So children who don't have, who are, in a sense, kind of aimless in their lives, or who are not doing well academically, or not given the right kind of information. So we do know that a lot of children who are indulging in sex and getting married do not know that if you do certain activities, you could get pregnant.
Right. So that boils down to sex education and awareness, which is often a very difficult topic here in Malaysia. So the reason why child marriage in Malaysia is so uncomfortable, difficult to talk about, is because of all these other factors, getting down to the root cause of why child marriage happens.
Yes.
Okay. How do you think the government can intervene more successfully? Because if you talk about teenage pregnancy as one of the causes for child marriage, I encouragingly saw that the Women, Family and Community Development Ministry, they said that they were going to put out a video at all cinemas, encouraging mothers who get pregnant out of wedlock to seek help, to say that you're not alone, you can seek help for this. Perhaps in a way, showing young mothers, teenage mothers perhaps, that they're not alone, they can seek help.
So that actually addresses the baby dumping issue, because there's a lot of
less
that.
than child marriage, not so much child marriage?
It won't address the child marriage issue. It addresses baby dumping.
Okay.
But sex education definitely will. Teaching children to say no, that they can say no.
Okay.
Teaching children that, in particular girls, that just because your boyfriend tells you he loves you, and this is the way to please him because he loves you, they can say no to that. They will find another boyfriend. This guy's useless. Dump him. We need to teach our children this. But also the poverty issue around that. Because, a lot of children are dropping out of school. The 11-year-old has dropped out of school. A lot of children are not getting a wholesome education that they need to give them an opportunity in life. A lot of children are not, so many of them are actually below the poverty line. And I know there are issues in terms of statistics. I don't want to get involved in that debate on the whole poverty index and stuff. But the bottom line is people are struggling. So these children are now going out to work. And if parents can pass on the responsibility, in particular of their daughters, to someone else, they tend to do that, because then they can focus on the younger ones. So that is part of the whole cycle, the cycle of marriage. But we do know, you asked this question earlier, we do know that a lot of the child marriages are not, they end in divorce. There is a lot of abuse within the child marriage, and a lot of them end in divorce. The Orang Asli girl was not unique in being 24 and 3 marriages. A lot of that is happening, and that is the kind of information that we seem to be getting. Although, again, because we don't keep statistics, remarriage is not that big a deal for a lot of them, so we don't have those statistics, even within the Sharia court.
There you go. I think what we need is more research on this, right?
Yes.
Evidence-based, so that we can make for a good argument.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have, Sharmila, on the show. I'm Melisa Idris. You've been watching The Future is Female. We've been talking about child marriage. Something for you to think about as we celebrate Merdeka Day and Malaysia Day. Happy Merdeka and Happy Malaysia Day to everyone watching. I'm Melisa Idris. I'll be back with you same time next week. See you then.